My name is Ariel Avgar, and I'm an associate professor in the Labor Relations Law and History Department at the ILR School, and associate dean for outreach. And I have the real privilege of introducing our speakers for this closing plenary session focused on the road ahead for labor. But before doing that, I wanted to reflect on what an inspiring, meaningful, and substantive conference this has been. A real tribute to Lois Gray and her countless contributions to our school and to the labor movement, and an especially fitting celebration of the ILR School's focus on labor, collective representation, and worker voice over the past 75 years. And while we're really proud of the important work that's been done over the past 75 years, this conference and this closing session emphasize the need for all of us, labor leaders, activists, workers and union members, policymakers, and academics to think ahead, to reimagine longstanding institutions, public policies, structures, and strategic approaches to enhance collective voice and to improve outcomes for communities, for workers, and for their families. As has been made abundantly clear during today's conference, we are at a crucial political and social juncture. Dr. Tammy Lee, Professor Tammy Lee just talked about that in her concurrent session. A perfect storm of sorts, one that allows us to do away with deeply held assumptions about what works and what doesn't work, and to do what the speakers and organizers of this conference have called on us to do, which is to confront the new challenges we face and to seize on the new opportunities made available with new, innovative, and creative tools. In my own research, for example, I study home healthcare workers, an often invisible and taken for granted workforce that, like many others, has been shown to be absolutely essential over the past year. As Mary Kay Henry noted during the opening plenary, this is clearly a moment to reconsider how we provide these important workers with real voice to influence both their working conditions and to enhance the care they provide for their patients. These workers will continue to be essential long after the pandemic is over, and we should ensure that we have leveraged this moment of clarity and focus on the role that they play to drive lasting, meaningful change that transform their workplace power, their voice, and their rights. As an administrator in a bureaucratic academic organization, I'm all too familiar with the strong commitment we tend to have to the strategies and approaches we have grown comfortable with, to the tools that have guided us in the past, which more often than not serve as barriers to innovative solution. As we call on each of you to take advantage of this moment, to relax this commitment to traditional old solutions, we too at the ILR School, in Outreach and in the Worker Institute, are reimagining the work that we do, from the manner in which we train and work with labor leaders in New York State and across the country, to the policy work that we do around precarious and marginalized workers, including gig economy workers, to our efforts to promote a new vision for labor and climate, all with the goal of providing support for the broader transformation we all discussed today. As we do so, we look forward to partnering and working with the array of extraordinary leaders who are meeting this moment. And speaking of creative, innovative leaders who are meeting this moment, I'd like to introduce our first closing plenary presenter, Erica Smiley. Smiley is the Executive Director of Jobs with Justice, a longtime organizer and movement leader. Smiley has been spearheading strategic organizing and policy interventions for JWJ for nearly 15 years. Prior to her current role, Smiley served as organizing director, developing campaigns that resulted in transformative changes to how working people organize and are civically engaged in their workplaces and in their communities. During her tenure at JWJ, Smiley has served in numerous leadership capabilities, including as campaigns director and as senior field organizer for the Southern region. She is currently co-authoring a book on bargaining and working people democracy with Sarita Gupta, which will be out with ILR Press. And I'm especially proud to note that Smiley is a graduate of our Worker Institute ULE program. Smiley, thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to your remarks.
Thanks, Ariel. It really is an honor to be here, and good morning, friends. I'm really honored to be able to share some words at this important gathering and in this critical moment in time. And I actually used to laugh when people open their remarks with this. If I look back even on the presentations that I've given over the last several years, I'm sure I've overused this phrase. But I think we can all agree that this is a pivotal moment for our country. And this week alone, we're still grappling with the vicious murders of so many people, unusually high, even in a U.S. context. I think as of Wednesday, with 7 mass shootings in 7 days, several fueled by racism and misogyny. Here we are attempting to slowly resurface as a society post a 100-year pandemic, entering a society somewhat unhinged. There's this awkwardly funny meme going around on social media earlier this week with the author stating that someone hit on his 70-year-old mother while she waited in line for the COVID-19 vaccine. And if that's what we have to look forward to this summer, we're in trouble. And I definitely laughed out loud, but it also triggered a little anxiety in me because I think far less funny is what many of us experienced last summer after the murders of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and many others. All of this makes this particular moment both a major political inflection point as well as a source of great personal anxiety for many working people, particularly for those of us who are not white. So I'm going to start off with a story, and I'm an expat Southerner, originally from North Carolina, and we tend to communicate in stories, so this probably won't be the first one I'll share. But when I was a young person, I wasn't always the most strategic decision maker, despite being a math and science nerd and getting into college and having a world of opportunities before me. I was still a kid, and kids can act stupid sometimes. And one night I happily found myself out drinking cheap liquor in a vacant lot near the school, just hanging out, loitering, underage drinking. That was me. Don't judge me. Some of y'all did much worse. I was one of the youngest kids hanging out in this group, the smallest, the only girl, and one of 2 Black people in the whole group. And I remember thinking how cool I was to be hanging out with these knuckleheads. And when the police arrived, we all scattered. Well, I should say we tried to scatter. We were a little too drunk to walk, let alone run. And as my underdeveloped brain contemplated what to do, I turned to face the officer and realized he had his gun pulled on me. Only me. All my friends were looking at me and putting their hands up, so I did the same thing. If I'd run, maybe he would have pulled the trigger. I'll never know. And frankly, I don't like thinking about it that much. In that moment, beyond being scared to death, I just thought about how disappointed my family was going to be, given everything they had done to help me get out and be successful. And I also just kept wondering why the gun was only pointed at me. And I still wonder about it sometimes. But he didn't shoot. And I went back to school and graduated, went on to organize, contributing to a democratic society alive. Many of the people you work with, many of your members have similar stories, and many of them carry the same anxiety as more and more states open up and go back to normal. We know we can never truly go back, and until the leaders of our movement speak to the needs and anxieties of our true base, our shared future remains precarious. Despite defeating Donald Trump in the 2020 elections, the political situation is still characterized by right-wing populism and how motivated or disgusted you are by it. A resurgence of right-wing populism has grown in numbers and boldness, both in the United States and globally throughout the last decade, emboldened by authoritarian leaders like former U.S. President Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin of Russia, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, and Boris Johnson of Great Britain. The reckless rhetoric of these administrations and their antagonistic relationships with facts has emboldened the most racist, xenophobic, sexist, and homophobic elements of society. Perhaps nowhere was this more apparent in the U.S. than during the insurrection on January 6th, when the Confederate flag made its first public appearance in the U.S. Capitol since the Civil War. The act was a reminder of what we were up against, and not just a symbolic reminder. Historian Eric Fonen elaborates on how Reconstruction-related policies sit at the root of modern-day conflicts in his most recent book, The Second Founding, How the Civil War and Reconstruction Remade the Constitution. The early Reconstruction periods were, by many accounts, marked by attempts to build a multiracial American democracy in all aspects of society. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolished slavery and all forms of forced labor. The 14th Amendment guaranteed citizenship to those born in the United States, and the 15th Amendment guaranteed the right to vote to Black men. All represented efforts to fully actualize democracy. And many of the gains made by progressive social movements since then were anchored in the promises of these constitutional amendments: women's suffrage, the New Deal, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. So it's really important to see that the work before us today is 150 years in the making to complete the grand project of building a multiracial democracy in the United States. And, we as a movement have been really pushing this. During the Obama administration, we attempted and failed to pass the Employee Free Choice Act to expand on the 13th Amendment. And shortly afterward, we tried, also less than successfully, to pass comprehensive immigration reform to build on the promise of the 14th Amendment. And we are in a live fight. Hopefully we'll be successful to renew the promise of the 15th Amendment by advancing the Voting Rights Act. These are all small d democratic fights, you see. Democracy is more than elections. While passing legislation is an important aspect of democracy, policy is also made at our work sites, apartment buildings, community centers, and various other programs and agencies. Working people must have enforceable, not just advisory roles in governing everywhere in order to have a healthy democracy. Our opposition could not be clearer about what democracy means for them. They have spent the past 150 years trying to eliminate it. These same gains that we've made have been targeted by conservative judges and elected officials who have intentionally, systematically rolled them back, many to pre-Civil War interpretations of the Constitution. The Reconstruction Project was incomplete, stopped in its tracks by those who wanted to reclaim control of wealth for a select few and put Black and immigrant communities back in their place, if not on a plantation, then as precarious wage laborers. Even the protections we managed to put in place for wage laborers included exemptions for work done by women and people of color, such as farm workers, domestic workers, migrants, and currently and formerly incarcerated people who tend to be overwhelmingly Black. And corporate CEOs have built on the practice of establishing subcategories of workers with limited rights, such as the modern-day gig worker or misclassified independent contractor, all direct descendants of laws preventing Black workers from earning wages through exploitative employment relationships like sharecropping or receiving tips based on a subjective experience of their service, as opposed to receiving a fair wage. I think it was best put by Barbara Fields, who appeared in Ken Burns' documentary series, The Civil War. The Civil War is still going on, she said, and it's still to be fought, and regrettably, it can still be lost. Until we recognize this fundamental tension, our opposition will continue to exploit these dynamics to erode our base, people who should be aligned with us against common enemies. Instead of identifying their actual exploiters and joining with immigrant communities, Muslims, and communities of color to make progressive change around their shared self-interest, working class white communities will often fall prey to the reactionary solutions touted by the extreme right that speak to their narrow, more fear-based interests. This is not just a matter of what is morally right, it is a strategic imperative for our movement's survival. I want to talk specifically about collective bargaining before I wrap up. Again, democracy is not just a system of political practices. It must be applied to participation and decision-making in all aspects of our economic lives as well. Without one, the whole system of democracy is compromised. Collective bargaining is it is fundamental to economic democracy. Collective bargaining at its best is a system by which working people can exercise collective power in a way that directly confronts the owners of capital and in a way that reclaims portions of that capital back to working people in their communities. It has served as a direct mechanism to fight for a fair return on the labor we put into building, operating, servicing, or moving something. Collective bargaining allows everyday people to practice democracy, directly engaging in the decisions and choices that impact our lives. And as a result, collective bargaining has provided a pathway to economic sustainability for millions of workers, ensuring they can support themselves and their families. For most of the past century, a union contract has been our best weapon to ensure access to staples of a social safety net, such as healthcare, retirement income, and other benefits often provided in other democracies, directly provided by the government. But collective bargaining is a means to an end, not the end itself. You don't tell people they have the right to elect a senator, you say they have the right to vote. Likewise, only telling people they have the right to form a union misses the point. They have the right to organize and collectively bargain, whatever that needs to look like based on their economic relationship to those currently exploiting them. We need not always limit it to how it is currently practiced by most unions. Many 20th century protections have been eroded and even perverted to limit the democratic activities of the working majority. Even what we were able to codify through the New Deal only came after hundreds of thousands of workers were in motion demanding an equal seat at the table. So it's important for us to imagine what a 21st century framework for collective bargaining might look like, a framework that allows the majority of workers in this country to organize and collectively bargain. Together, we must draw new pictures of the 21st century union, either adapting into them or putting energy into building with new groupings coming online each day. Because of shifts in capital, economic democracy in the 21st century cannot be achieved solely on a framework focused exclusively on work sites supported by the legal framework of the National Labor Relations Act. That's important, but also important, organizers must explore more expansive definitions of collective bargaining that adapt to the context of global capitalism and all its features, including addressing the material and cultural needs of the modern worker who, shockingly, doesn't solely see herself as a worker, but instead sees herself as having a diverse array of identities. This means ultimately changing the very nature of what a union contract covers, broadening what individuals can negotiate over, who they can negotiate with, all from their direct boss to the individuals with concentrated power in their sector or their community. And of course, confronting the system of white supremacy and movements for white nationalism must remain a central element of this overall strategy to prevent the opposition from dividing workers and weakening our collective power. You know, like I mentioned before, I grew up in North Carolina, and kids like me did not know what a union was, and there were precious few people around who would take the time to explain it to us. My first direct action was with my church at St. James Presbyterian in Greensboro, a boycott of Kmart. I was 16 years old. I did not know what a union was, but I knew that the discrimination workers, mostly Black women, were experiencing in that store, people who went to our church, was not fair. And I watched power and collective action change their situation for the better. Our institutions are made up of people who are union members, or at least members of organizations that are able to support and develop them in making this case. But we will not win unless we support and build a movement of people who do not have access to our democracy practicing institutions, but want access to our democracy practicing institutions, a group which represents the majority of workers in this country. And frankly, whether we're ready or not, many workers, particularly Southern Black workers, have long been ready. Whether the sanitation workers in Memphis, auto workers in Mississippi and Tennessee, shipyard workers in Norfolk, or today's Amazon workers in Bessemer, Alabama, Southern Black workers, and many of their white counterparts too, have been ready to fight for 21st century frameworks for economic democracy. And frankly, are tired of dragging union leaders kicking and screaming to the Southern region to help us. Why do we think the laws are so skewed against unions in the South? Because that's our most potentially militant base of working people. Why would we continue as a labor movement to keep leaving all that power on the table? Today, our job is to infuse the energy of workers who are already in motion, whether our institutions are involved or not, into structural changes that will lead to increased participation of those directly impacted in governing the standards and conditions of their workplace, industry, and economic lives. Nationally, this entails an agenda to expand voting rights at work, framing the PRO Act and other labor law reforms from the Power Act to the Public Service Freedom of Association Act to the Essential Workers Bill of Rights, all of these in the same context as the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, and the thus far failed Equal Rights Amendment, all of which were designed to make the democracy-oriented amendments to the U.S. Constitution, the Reconstruction Amendments, work better in practice. We have an opportunity to fulfill the promises of Reconstruction and carry through our push to expand democracy to all forms of public life, intentionally choosing campaigns that align the shared self-interest of white workers, Black workers, immigrants, indigenous communities, and all workers of color against systems of white supremacy and corporate control. It is time to reclaim our country and the vision so many of our ancestors intended for our future, to truly imagine a democracy worth fighting for.
Great. Thank you so much, Smiley, for your insightful, thought-provoking remarks. I'd like to now introduce our final speaker for the day, Elizabeth Shuler. Elizabeth Shuler is the AFL-CIO's Secretary-Treasurer, its second-ranking officer, the first woman elected to this position, and the youngest woman ever on the Federation's Executive Council. First elected in 2009, Liz is the Federation's chief financial officer and oversees its operation. Liz is the AFL-CIO's leads the initiatives on future of work, the clean energy and economy, workforce development, and empowering women and young workers. Liz is committed to busting myths about labor, leveraging the labor movement's diversity for innovative approaches to social justice, and making the benefits of a union voice on the job available to working families everywhere. Liz, thank you so much for joining us for this conference, and we really look forward to your remarks.
Thank you so much, Associate Dean Avgar. Thank you to Dean Colvin and all of the folks at Cornell. 75 years of IRL. Yay! Thank you so much. I'm proud to share the virtual stage with so many luminaries today, including my friend Smiley, Organize the South, right? And I know my sister Mary Kay Henry was on earlier. I'm going to look up her speech virtually, hopefully later. So I'm so thrilled to see also my friend Patricia Campos Medina as the executive director of the Worker Institute. I used to walk the halls with her in Congress when she was in DC with Evie Dubrow. I don't know if folks remember her, but another legendary woman leader. And when I think of legends, though, Lois Gray, of course, comes immediately to mind. She was an innovator, and she was tireless in her effort to lift up women. And she found a strategy for women to use to succeed in their unions. It's very simple, but so important. And that is building networks of support with each other. And I think that's a lesson that applies broadly. We want people everywhere in every sector to see the labor movement as a network of support, a place they can belong at the intersection, as Smiley mentioned. And that the AFL-CIO and America's unions are a catalyst for innovation, not just for its members, but for all working people. We are the place where movements converge and people connect. A football player in the NFLPA and a steel worker in Pittsburgh standing together to support warehouse workers organizing right now at Amazon in Bessemer, Alabama, right? Have you seen that bumper sticker or that meme that the labor movement, the folks who brought you the weekend? I love it because it's a perfect example of union innovation that has impacted everyone. And you think back to the days of grim and dangerous factories and mills and, endless work days. That was unacceptable to the labor movement. So we got creative. We invented the weekend. And it was a response to major changes in our economy and our society that were happening around us because essentially major changes in technology at the time, right? So that is a parallel to today. Technological changes are accelerating in the pandemic, and inequality is skyrocketing along with it. And it's greater than at any point in our history, which we attribute to the decades of attacks on our organizing rights. And so a truly worker-centered recovery, that's what we're talking about, right, depends on restoring those rights and reclaiming our power. And if we think back to 1935, way back when the National Labor Relations Act was passed, it actually encouraged collective bargaining. It didn't just permit it, right? This was the law of the land to encourage it. But that was before the Phillips head screwdriver was even invented. That was before super glue and sunglasses and never mind artificial intelligence and big data. It was a long time ago. So we need to update labor laws for this century. We need to pass the PRO Act. And that's how we turn existing jobs into good union careers and use our leverage to shape the future of work to make sure that we are protected and we're supported through this change. And we are facing some major changes. New technology on the horizon, a pivot to a sustainable energy future. For both of those, we need just transitions. And the key word is just, right? If it's not just, workers are going to resist it because we have gone through change in the past and we got burned. And policy enabled corporations to offshore. They shut down, they left workers and their communities stranded. Then with deindustrialization, unchecked automation, the shift in power from workers to the wealthy, and on top of it, the loss of union density and what unions provide, pay, job security, retirement, a sense of identity and community disappeared. And we used to have multiple generations from one family, even in the same union. We had entire union towns. And studies show the pain from the resulting social isolation from all of this is felt the same as if it were a physical injury. So what happened? Well, some of these folks searched for a way to connect, and they found it on Facebook. And many were falling down those disinformation rabbit holes, right? And for all of his lies, Trump is so dangerous because he exploited hurt and fear that is very, very real. And so navigating the current political terrain means reaching out to those stranded workers and learning from our past policy mistakes and really looking at the role the labor movement can play as a source for civic engagement, to dispel that fear, to protect our democracy and be a trusted source for the real data, right? The real facts. And we have to overcome fear and the age-old tactic of division. And to balance the scales, we need all of us together on the same side. And the problem is corporate power and profit is happening at our expense. And now they have very powerful technology enabling them to squeeze us even more on a whole new level. And I'm looking at the platform economy these days, right? The platform companies using algorithms, data run technology to exploit gig workers. People say about, DoorDash. Oh, DoorDash workers are making $18.54 per active hour. Yeah, right. Well, after expenses, the take-home pay per real hour is more like $1.45, according to a study. And the companies get away with it because of these business models that are relying entirely on misclassification, right, as independent contractors. So the legal and regulatory challenges we have is addressing how technology is changing work, creating different types of work, and then figuring out how we empower all workers to organize. And again, we think the PRO Act is the way we do that. And I know we're running short on time here, but we also have to talk about innovation policy, right? Everyone understands technology doesn't just exist. It's the result of a complex set of very expensive research and development processes, right? And we pay for that. We taxpayers pay for it. A lot of public funding underwrites science and tech breakthroughs. And that is what is powering companies like Amazon, right? And that can be a good thing if we all get a return on that investment. If we all see wealth and prosperity that benefits more people than just a few, right? But that is not happening right now. And we want to put a worker voice and perspective into every relevant step of the innovation process, not just at the end, but at the beginning, that we should shape the decisions on how technology is developed. And that leads to better decisions about how the technology is used, right? And I call it co-creating. We say collective bargaining. We should maybe start saying collective creation, right? So that is a paradigm shift. And I hope that folks saw Jennifer Bates, an Amazon worker, last week at the Senate budget hearing. I mean, she was talking about how Amazon workers are being constantly watched and monitored, and that, Amazon thinks they're another machine. This cannot be, right? We need to make sure that corporations are kept in check, especially when it comes to the way they collect data and how they're abusing and exploiting workers, essentially, in these new platform-based approaches to work. So this isn't just about Amazon. This is about building a movement that chooses freedom over fear, that seeks opportunities to grow and to innovate the next weekend, right? To organize on the next frontier and to reclaim our power by connecting with each other. And as another organizer said, I'm in it for everybody, not just me. And that is what Lois Gray understood. And for her lifetime of work, that's why I'm here. And in every step we take to move forward, we honor her legacy. Thank you.
Many thanks, Liz, for your remarks and for the vision you just outlined, a perfect conclusion to an amazing conference. Before concluding our conference, I'd like to express my deep appreciation to my terrific colleagues who have played a role in putting all of this together. A very big thank you to Kim Cook for her leadership in planning this conference and for her extraordinary work on the Lois Gray Innovation Initiative. Thanks to Jeff Grabelski for his leadership guidance on this conference as well. I also want to thank and appreciate the fantastic leadership of the Worker Institute, Patricia Campos Medina and Eileen DeVault. Thanks also to Esther Bigler, Kathleen Mulligan, Nellie Brown, Christine Hess, Stephanie Olszewski, Rhonda McKellen, Cherie Morales, Ginny Dolcast and her students, Rose Bott and Kate Griffith. Thanks also to our marketing and communication team that publicized this event and helped put it together, and to our colleagues at Cornell. And finally, I want to thank all of you for engaging with us in this important conversation. We look forward to continuing the discussion with you in many different forums and settings, and to making meaningful progress towards the vision of a stronger labor movement capable of delivering fully on its promise. Thank you all, and have a wonderful weekend.
This conference is funded by the Lois Gray Innovation Initiative. In this short clip, you will learn more about Lois, a trailblazer, a fighter for worker rights, for human rights, for rights for women and people of color, a believer that the trade union movement would make the world better for all people.
Early on in Lois Gray's life, she managed to perfect the delicate female balancing act that ambitious women of her generation found necessary. Her quiet strength and sharp mind instilled confidence, and with an engaging smile, she left all who came in contact with her in awe. She inherited her fierce loyalties and a penchant for selfless dedication from her father, a preacher known for his sermons against racial prejudice long before such views were openly accepted. Academic in the truest sense of the word, with a long list of credentials in economics that include a bachelor's degree from Park College in 1943, a master's degree from the University of Buffalo in 1955, and a PhD from Columbia in 1965. It was near the end of World War II that Lois became enthralled with the study of labor issues. In 1945, she took on a field examiner position with the National Labor Relations Board in Buffalo. It was around this time that Lois became involved with the man who would become her husband, Ed Gray. Ed was a handsome and ambitious member of the United Auto Workers Union, and the two embarked on a marriage to each other and to the labor movement. The labor cause took up most of their time and was so important to them that they spent their honeymoon at a UAW State Fed meeting in New York.
Field examiner for the National Labor Relations Board in Buffalo, and I had read about the ILR school and was very much interested in the fact that such a school was established in New York State. And I talked with Jean McKelvey and Morris Neufeld about my interest in the school and expressed a desire to go on for a graduate degree at ILR. And first thing I knew, instead of hearing about the graduate program, I received a job offer.
And so that's it. It was an accidental beginning of my career with ILR, and I've been here ever since. And I thought I was going, just for a year. And I thought, well, that's a great opportunity. Sure, I agreed right away.
And you stayed there for
9 years.
For 9 years.
Yeah.
And you have been at the ILR school for 71,
almost 70.
72 years. A long and illustrious career you've had.
Lois has been one of labor's most ardent supporters. She has been a champion of working men and women throughout her career.
To be on top, to be out in front, and to constantly to be offering these challenges to the practitioner community. We want ILR to be number one.
Hello, I'm Kim Cook. I'm an associate at the Cornell Worker Institute, and I had the honor of working with Lois Gray in the last few years of her amazing life, and now I get to facilitate her legacy through the Lois Gray Innovation Initiative that she created. Lois wanted to continue the work that she started using innovative ideas to expand workers' rights and keep that going here at the Worker Institute. So we invite you to learn more about the Lois Gray Innovation Initiative and even contribute to this work by looking for the link on the event page for the conference or going to the Cornell Worker Institute website. Thanks so much for your support.